Hello and welcome to Jill Cameron Creations. Thanks so much for joining me today. Go ahead and hit that subscribe button so you don't miss a single video. We are using the Spellbinders Dogwood Etched die set. It is part of the Spring 2022 collection. Here we take a look real quick at the color palette that I'm going to use. It's peachy pinks, and I'm going to use some muted greens as well as a dark brown for the branch. I'm going to cut all of the blooms out of white cardstock and Copic color those, and the rest of the pieces I will be cutting out of actual colored cardstock. Before we make our flowers, let's go ahead and ink blend our background. I'm using a white 80-pound cardstock with an Altenew small ink blending brush, and I'm using Pinkfresh Studios ink. I'm starting at the center of my panel with my lightest color and working my way out to my darkest colors. The one great thing about using these blender brushes is you don't get the marks when you start in the middle of the panel. You no longer have to start off of your panel. You can just blend starting in the middle, and it's amazing. Did 2 layers of ink on this. I started with my lightest color and worked my way out to my darkest, and then I came back in from darkest to lightest to blend all of my edges together and to get that really deep ink effect that I wanted for my background. And the process is super sped up. I wish I could ink blend this fast. That would be amazing. Super bionic strength of ink blending. But unfortunately, I can't ink blend that fast. So this did take me a few minutes to do. And here's our finished panel. I'm going to add some sparkle to this just to give it a little bit of shine in some places. And that's going to set to the side to dry. Went ahead and die cut all of my white pieces for my blooms. It is 2 per bloom, and it has a little fat one and a little skinny one, and I just cut 6 of these out. I didn't know how many exactly I was going to use on my card, so I just went ahead and cut 6 out. For the coloring, I colored my entire petal with my lightest color first. Then I added a little bit of dark on the ends where it dips down into the petal, my next to lightest color, and then I blended everything back out. Dogwoods have more color at the tips of their petals than they do at the center, and their centers tend to be a little green. However, I'm not a fan of the green, and this is a card, so I can make my dogwood blooms look exactly how I want them to, and the peach ones that are really dark at the ends are my favorites. I live in Virginia, so there's dogwood trees everywhere. It is our state flower. These are super easy to put together. Before you move into shaping your flower, just make sure that your cardstock is completely dry. If not, you could run the risk of making the top layer of the paper wrinkle, and you don't want to do that because that will ruin your flower. A broad tip stylus that I have on hand, and actually that little teeny tiny little thing over there that's black that I'm shaping and cupping around the flower is a tiny little spoon, and I have absolutely zero idea where it came from. If you don't have little styluses or something like that, you can use the end of a paintbrush. Works really well, like your skinny paintbrushes. They'll work really well. You can also use a dry ink pen that the ink is dried up in it, and you can use that roller ball that's in there to create that cupping effect or lines in the paper to give it a little bit more dimension. Just use what you have on hand if you don't have anything right off. Of course, there are definitely styluses out there, and I'll link to those in my product list and supply list below. To add shape to your flowers, the only thing that you're doing is applying pressure and breaking up the fiber of the paper just a little bit, and it's going to leave that paper in that shape. You don't have to wet it, you don't have to do anything, just apply a little bit of pressure in those areas and the paper itself will hold that shape. For the center of the flower, I went around the very edge of some craft colored cardstock and darkened that up a little bit, and when I rolled the center of the flower, the very center of the flower, I made sure that the end of it was flat so that I could add glue and stick that in the center there. And I think I can say center one more time. The center of the flowers have a lot of dimension to them, and we're gonna, after the glue dries, I go ahead and fluff out those centers as well. The leaves themselves don't have any embossed lines in them, so I went ahead with my stylus and added some embossed lines in my leaves. Very simple process, just drawing them in like you would if you had an ink pen. I cut the branches out of brown cardstock and I cut one of them in half, so I have 3 different branches on the front of my panel. Now I'm going to figure out how I want all of my flowers and my leaves to kind of go on the front and how many flowers I want where. You see that there's a sentiment that has been added to the front panel of the card. I did that in Glimmer hot foil. Thanks a bunch, and I will link to the set that came from below in the description. And I'm just gonna go ahead and play a little bit of music while I finish laying this out. I think it's really nice to see a process of putting together a card front like this and just figuring out where everything came from and just seeing that process there. I used liquid adhesive to attach everything down to the card front and some foam tape for my sentiment here. The bottle that I'm using is a needle tip bottle. It is Nuvo Deluxe adhesive that's in that bottle. I had some that had like leftovers in it, so I just went ahead and added all of them together. I trimmed off all of the extra stuff that was hanging off, all the branches that were hanging off of the front of my card. I did not trim off the leaves or the petals of the flowers, however. I left those there. I just trimmed off the ends of the branches. Part of the card, I sat there and I looked at it for a minute and it just needed something else and I wasn't really sure what it needed. I went ahead and fluffed out the centers of the flowers a little bit, and I didn't want to add any bulk to the ends of the centers of the flowers, though I knew I didn't want to do that. I just sat there and looked at it for a minute, so I went ahead and added clear Nuvo drops here and there and look like dewdrops in the background, and this picked up some of the bolder color in the background of the panel there, and I absolutely loved this. When I saw the dogwoods, I was thrilled because, like I said, I'm from Virginia and live in Virginia, and it's our state flower, so I just knew I had to have dogwoods, and Spellbinders made this so simple to put together a dogwood flower and trees here. Absolutely so cute. I loved it, and the thanks a bunch just fit so well. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you give 3D flowers a shot. There's several different kinds over at Spellbinders, and I have them linked below in the description. Y'all have a great day.